It was my great good fortune to work with our next reader in the Personal Narratives Introduction to Memoir Workshop this session. From the first night, I was impressed with Pam's gift for detail and voice, her knack for creating full and rich scenes on the page. And week after week, she delivered essays that are inquisitive and generous, smart and warm, and beautifully written. It was a genuine pleasure to spend time with her work. Please welcome Pamela Smith.
Henry. My grandfather Henry resembled the city that adopted him. Broad shoulders, short, a little pugnacious, always with a chip on his shoulder, a match for the second city. Born in London, he came to Chicago with his parents and three brothers in 1912, the same year as the sinking of the Titanic. His family traveled steerage class on a less famous ship and felt lucky to arrive intact and healthy. They settled in the north side of the city. His father ran a newsstand downtown. Henry was the third of four brothers. Shrimp ran off to join the Army during the war to end all wars. At 15, not old enough to legally enlist, he lied about his birthday. After a few weeks at boot camp, he realized that Army life had certain expectations. He confessed to his real birthday and was sent home. After listening to his mother complain for a few weeks, he decided that Army life wasn't so bad. He lied again, re-enlisted, and retired 25 years later as a colonel. Muscles never seemed to have any visible means of employment. The Luftmensch in Yiddish, according to Henry. He lived over a tavern and did odd jobs, mostly for mobsters, the family thought. He would occasionally show up for a meal and for holidays and disappeared for weeks at a time. If he did work for the mob, and we never knew for sure, he lived a quiet life and died an old man. Sam was the only brother to finish high school. He moved to California and worked in construction. His three children were called brother, sister, and Sonny, for lack of another gender. Henry stayed in Chicago. Ending his schooling after 8th grade, he began working in a restaurant. By age 35, married with two daughters, he saved enough to buy a restaurant of his own. There wasn't much to look at: one counter, a few tables, and a pinball machine. He served breakfast and lunch and fed everyone from the mayor to mobsters, often at the same time. He had an easy way with customers, his speech sprinkled with Yiddish, talking politics or his beloved Cubs. "Bist Meshuggah," he would say, "are you crazy?" if someone mistakenly complimented the White Sox or Republicans. In the back room of the restaurant, cases of unmarked merchandise mysteriously appeared and disappeared. Somehow Mayor Daley never noticed the small gray men who nodded but never spoke. In those years, there was little difference between aldermen and gangsters. My grandfather just introduced me to everyone with a "Pam, shake hands with Mr. Daley. This is my granddaughter, Rashid Nachas." A great joy. No additional information was given to me or thought to be needed. Manny the bookie disappeared into the back room and commandeered the phone to have access to the ponies. Years later, my mother told me that Manny ordered the phone and paid the bill. My grandfather never gambled, but saw no reason why others shouldn't be allowed the opportunity. "Let them gain it," he would say. "Leave them be." Not that he wouldn't participate in a few Gneivische Stiftlach, a few shady deals. He bargained at the markets on Roosevelt Road for cheap jewelry, which he resold behind the counter. If a customer asked for a watch of better quality, he would make a great show of going to the back for his better style. Out of sight, he would double the price on the tag and return with the same watch, which was often gratefully purchased. He would look at me and say, "An art left an art, a fool remains a fool," or "Einen's mazel is an Andrew's mazel. One's luck is another misfortune." I knew to remain silent. Sundays, I was allowed to stay in the diner after my parents left, wrapping silverware and napkins, placing one in each counter stool. Not trusted with coffee, I would pour cold drinks for carefully selected customers who didn't mind partially filled cups or a few drips. Half hidden behind the counter, my grandfather would feed me breakfast meat and eggs. Somehow I knew this was our secret, like the watches in Manny the bookie. I knew if I asked, I'd be told, "Nish gedaya, don't worry about it." I didn't know breakfast meat was ham until I went to overnight camp the summer before 8th grade. My grandfather ran the diner for over 30 years. After he retired, his biggest pleasure was escaping to the basement to smoke a cheap cigar, certain that no one would notice he was missing. After tea, my grandmother would call him up for dinner. He would slowly climb the steps, shaking out his shirt, knowing that no one would comment on the stale cigar smoke that wafted through the vents.